Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege of Parshas Vayishlach, and the parsha, of course, opens with the dramatic encounter between the brothers. This encounter has been more than 2 decades in the making. Yaakov Avinu has been living in the house of Lavan, both creating a family, amassing his own wealth. Esav doing his thing, building a nation, building a family as well. And of course, in this fateful encounter, Yaakov has no idea what to expect, friend or foe, and through tremendous divine providence, nothing short of a miracle, the reunion actually is beautiful and is loving and is accepting, to the point that Esav even invites Yaakov Avinu to join him, going back home to Seir. Yaakov Avinu politely declines. He actually says, I'll catch up with you later, because Yaakov Avinu understood that his path forward, his destiny, was to be forged without his brother. And then the Torah then records a simple, straightforward detail. The pasuk says, Parak Lamed Gimel pasuk Yud chapter 33, verse 18. Vayavo Yaakov Shalem Ir Shechem. Yaakov Avinu came complete to the city of Shechem. Now we know, of course, in Shechem was the tragic episode, the horrific episode of the abduction and abuse of Dinah. But before we get into that, the Torah tells us that Yaakov Avinu arrived in Shechem, straightforward, and this is where he set up camp, he set up his family, he established his residence there. And his intention, it appears, was to be there for some amount of time. But what's interesting is the Torah doesn't just tell us that Yaakov Avinu came to Shechem. It tells us that he came to Shechem Shalem, complete, and Rashi, or whole. And Rashi HaKodesh says, what does this mean? He came to Shechem complete and whole. Rashi says something amazing. Shalem begufo. He came to Shechem and he was whole or complete physically. Shenisrapi mitzaliso. He was healed from his limp. Remember, in the night before the encounter with Esav, the Torah records the fight with the mysterious Ish. Yaakov Avinu spent the whole night fighting with this mysterious man who Rashi HaKodesh identifies as the ministering angel of Esav. And although Yaakov Avinu was still standing the next morning, he was limping. And therefore Rashi HaKodesh says when he comes to Shechem, he was healed from his limp. He was Shalem begufo, complete or whole physically. Next, Shalem b'mamono. He was whole and complete financially. Shalochiser klum mikol osadaran. Remember, Yaakov Avinu sent a massive gift, so much livestock to Esav, to the point that he probably depleted his financial coffers. Therefore, Rashi says when he comes to Shechem, he was Shalem b'mamono. He was financially complete. He was restocked. He was replenished financially. And lastly, Shalem b'toraso. He was complete in his Torah, complete in his spirituality. Shelo shachach tamudo bebeis Lavan. For he did not go ahead and forget any of his Torah in Lavan. Remember again, Yaakov Avinu spent over 20 years in the house of Lavan, an atmosphere of alien ideology and theology, where Yaakov Avinu must have been bombarded constantly by just negative influences. But yet Rashi HaKodesh says that when he came to Shechem, he was whole spiritually, whole and complete spiritually. So therefore, again, the Torah Kadosh is telling us Yaakov Avinu doesn't just arrive in Shechem, but rather, again, he arrives in Shechem Shalem. He is completely whole. He is whole and complete, both physically healed from his limp, financially, his material coffers are replenished from the massive gift to Esav, and whole and complete spiritually, that he did not suffer a setback when living in the house of Lavan. Incredible. The Hilig Magid the Mezrich Magid, who was the Talmud Mufak, the primary disciple of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, asks a simple question. He says, Madua Torah mitzayenes prat zeh zman rav acher siyum ha'yurim sheikshur b'mifkash im Esav. Now the Rabbi asks, it's an interesting question. The Rabbi says, if you look at all of these things are pretty much related to the encounter with Esav. It's true, the last one about Torah, spirituality, is focused on Lavan, but all of it happened back after the encounter with Esav. Why is it recorded here that Yaakov Avinu is whole and complete when he comes to Shechem? Why isn't it recorded immediately in the aftermath of the event of the encounter with Esav? Now, just to sharpen the Maggid's question a little bit, remember there's an important detail here that we can't overlook, which is after the encounter with Esav, Yaakov Avinu doesn't go right to Shechem. In fact, the Torah says that he stopped in a place called Sukkos. The Torah says, Vayakov nasa Sukkosa, Vayivan lo bayis u'miknei asa Sukkos. Yaakov came to Sukkos. He went to a place called Sukkos. He made a house. He made a domicile for his livestock. And Rashi HaKodesh says he spent a year and a half in Sukkos. A year and a half in Sukkos. So the Maggid asked an interesting question. He says, so it's been already a year and a half since Yaakov Avinu encountered Esav. If Yaakov was really healed from his limp, and he was healed and he was whole financially, and he was healed and he was whole spiritually, Why are you waiting to record that fact till he gets to Shechem? Why not go ahead and presumably record it when it happened, meaning after the encounter with Esav? It's a fascinating question, an interesting take on all the events, but the Maggid says something absolutely amazing. The Maggid says, I'll tell you why. He says, Api pshuto shel mikra, baror, sha'sagas hashleimos achar hapigia bekaf hayerech va'achare hadar nagadol doreshes zman. The Torah is teaching us a very important lesson. Because Yaakov Avinu was not healed and was not made whole immediately. Because to become shalim, to become a whole and complete and healed, takes time. So therefore, again, in the aftermath of the fight with the ministering angel of Esav, Yaakov Avinu has that limp. It wasn't healed the next day. It took 1.5 years for it to heal. And Yaakov Avinu's material coffers were depleted by the magnanimous gift that he gave to Esav. And it took time to financially rebound from that. And Yaakov Avinu was adversely impacted by his time with Lavan. How can you not be adversely impacted by living with a Lavan for 1.5 years? You know, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says something amazing. If you look at Yaakov Avinu in last week's parasha, in the beginning of the parasha, Yaakov Avinu has a dream. And what happens in his dream? There are angels going up and down the ladders. Up and down the ladders. Incredible. If you fast forward towards the end of the parasha, when Yaakov Avinu 22 years later is taking leave of Lavan, he has a dream again. What's his dream about? Sheep. Material wealth. The Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says, Ay vava, Yaakov Avinu, what happened to you? In the beginning of the parasha, you're dreaming about malachim. And by the end of the parasha, you're dreaming about sheep. You're dreaming about material wealth. What happened? What happened to you, Yaakov Avinu? And the answer is very simple. He spent 22 years with Lavan. Because living in the house of Lavan, being surrounded with those alien theologies and ideologies, has a negative impact. As Yaakov Avinu rebounded, he became whole, he was healed, but it took time. And says the Heilige Maggid, Torah is teaching us something so amazing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu endowed us with the ability to rebound. He endowed us with the ability to get back up in the aftermath of failure. He endowed us with the ability to build, to rebuild, even when everything is destroyed. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is also telling us that sometimes in life, you have to be patient. You're not always going to see the results of your efforts immediately. Sometimes rebuilding, rehabilitating, becoming whole, becoming complete takes time. It just takes time. And this is difficult sometimes for us to absorb because often, again, one of the hallmarks of the Jewish people is that we are very impatient. We are very impatient. And that's a strength because we push ourselves. We want to accomplish. But sometimes in life, you have to be patient in order to see the results. And for many of us, one of the most difficult things in life is putting in effort and not seeing immediate results. I did the work, and where are the results? And often we feel that if I don't see the results immediately, I must have failed. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us through Yaakov Avinu that's not the way life works. Sometimes, you put in the effort, you try hard, you fall, you fail, you rebuild. And your efforts take time to yield fruit. They take time to actualize. They take time to come to fruition. And that time doesn't represent failure. It just represents the way life works. Sometimes when something is damaged, it takes time to get repaired. The greatest example of this, and that's why, again, Rashi starts out, Shalem begufo. Yaakov Avinu had a limp. It takes that, when a person gets sick, any person who's sick, right? What's the thought that goes through their mind all the time? I just want to get better. I just want to get better, right? I just want to get better right now. And then I realize, okay, the body runs its course. And it's going to take time. And the same way it takes time for the body to heal itself. A lot of other things that we rupture, and sometimes that we destroy, and that we demolish, take time to become rehabilitated, and take time to get repaired as well. You know, you find this often in the realm of like relationships. Sometimes, let's say we'll use the example of marriage. Say I do something and I upset or I offend my wife. And then again, one of those rare instances where I take responsibility, right? I did it, and I go over and I apologize. So maybe it's happened that sometimes you've done this, and maybe your spouse is not forgiving you, right? Now, again, it's important to be a forgiving person. Maybe they're not ready. Sometimes a person's not ready to forgive. And sometimes it's amazing that like the offender becomes so offended, but I apologize. There's even like a little tear, like in the corner of my eye. That's how genuine this is. How dare you not forgive me? But we forget that sometimes when you break someone, when you hurt someone, You can rebuild the relationship, but it's going to take time. It's going to take time. Like Rabbi Nachman says, if you believe that you have the ability to destroy, you have to believe that you have the ability to rebuild. But sometimes the Maggid is teaching us that rebuilding takes time. Vayavo Yaakov Sholem Ir Shechem. Yaakov Avinu Baruch Hashem teaches us that you could rebuild the same way that the body regenerates. Yaakov Avinu was healed from his limp. In the same way that Hakadosh Baruch Hu gave us the ability to rebound financially. If we work hard, hopefully, again, even if we've been depleted financially, either because of mistakes we've made or because of things that have happened to us, hopefully if we work hard enough, we'll be able to replenish our material coffers as well. And even in the realm of spirituality, we may make terrible mistakes that cause us to suffer significant setbacks in the world of ruchnius. We could attain shleimus, we could attain completion, we could get back and even become even better than we were before. But when does Yaakov Avinu become shalem? A year and a half later. Because sometimes things take time. You know what the secret to success for the Yid is? Be willing to work hard. Be willing to put in all the effort you need to do to rebuild yourself physically, to rebuild yourself financially, to rebuild yourself spiritually, to rebuild your relationships. Put in all of the effort, right? Take out all the stops, push down on the gas, do whatever you have to do, work as hard and as fast as you can. But then recognize that you're going to have to be patient to ultimately see the results. There are things in life where the results are instantaneous, but more often than not, the bigger the goal, the bigger the dream, the bigger the initiative, the more time it's going to take for it to actualize and come to fruition. Even the Heilige Yaakov Avinu, the Bechir Sheba Avos, like Chazal call him the best of the patriarchs, was able to regenerate, was able to rebuild, was able to rehabilitate, was able to become a whole and complete once again. But it took him time. And if it took Yaakov Avinu time to rebound from all of his setbacks in life, then we must be willing to cultivate that same sense of patience. We must be willing to put in all of the work, but not expect instantaneous results. We must believe in our ability to get back up no matter how badly we have failed. We must believe in our ability to go ahead and build back stronger, greater, and holier than we will before. But like Yaakov Avinu, we must also have the staying power, the patience to recognize that although we'll get to that shleimus, we'll get to that completion, we'll get to that wholeness, we will not only regain former grandeur and glory, but it'll become even better. But we must have patience to see our efforts through to fruition. We must be patient enough to see all of the effort actualize. This was the greatness of Yaakov Avinu, and we must make this greatness our own as well. Wishing everyone a good night of Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.